Nolan Conway is a photographer. His subjects aren't in nature, nor are they supermodels or newsmakers. His subjects are average Americans in average locations, such as McDonald's and Walmart. Joining us now for more on his work in New York, photographer Nolan Conway. And it's great to meet you via satellite to the Big Apple. And let's start with this, Nolan. What was the good job that you used to have that you gave up to become a photographer?
I was an engineer running around tunnels 180 feet beneath Manhattan. I was actually a technician working at an engineering firm.
And what was wrong with that job?
It was not creative. Although it was exciting, it was not creative. And I had that creative bug, and at my 30-year crisis, I quit and bought a camera. And the next thing you knew, I was driving around the country in pursuit of all manner of photo essays on rural Americans.
So tell us about the McDonald's Project. For starters, where the idea that going into a bunch of different McDonald's restaurants around your country would somehow pay off in lots of absolutely fascinating, riveting images to look at.
I was actually working on a different project that was taking me around like different rural states on the East Coast or on the West Coast, and I was using the internet in a McDonald's in Nampa, Idaho, when this gentleman walked in, and I actually don't have his photo released yet, who had a gun strapped to his belt. It was Idaho is an open carry state, so you could carry a weapon. And he walked in, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have to take his photo." So I grabbed my camera, and he was kind enough to let me take his photo. And I was about to post it to Facebook when, within 10 minutes, this little girl walks in wearing what appears to be just a blanket and some sandals. And I was like, this can't be real. I think there's a photo series here. And sure enough, and I started, as I was working on this other project, I started poking into McDonald's all over the West Coast, and soon enough, this series got on the roll.
So a couple of things to unpack there. Number one, it was the sort of ordinariness of everyday America that you found fascinating. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. And it's I'm from a small town, a small city in Washington, in rural Washington State, and I guess although I lived in New York for so many years, I get sort of nostalgic. So it's fun to go on these road trips and like sort of be in the and pursue photo projects, that portray my people, if you will.
And as you suggested, you did ask permission of the man with the gun to take his picture. Is that your MO? Do you ask everybody whose picture you take for permission before you do it?
Yeah, that's something I've always found like very important. Like I don't want this to be like the people of Walmart type situation. Like I feel it's much more kind to the subject and less exploitative when I ask them if I can take their pictures. And it's also then I can also get them to I can observe them for longer, and I can and occasionally I'll have to invent something for them to do, but usually people will come up with their own things, as long as I can observe.
What I found interesting about the ones that certainly made the New York Times series was that usually when you ask somebody to take their picture, they give you a big smile. There were no smiles in any of the pictures that you took, or let me rephrase, in any of the pictures that you published. Was that intentional?
Yeah, it was intentional. I wanted to catch them in a more natural state, like, because you're not always smiling. I mean, I guess occasionally you'll have people, people will laugh, when talking to each other. But I wanted it to be a more contemplative series and less of a sort of a fun series, because it's not if I have too many people like having fun in McDonald's, I don't want it to be overtly an advertisement for McDonald's, although it already is somewhat of an advertisement just by virtue of being in there.
Well, the Golden Arches are in a lot of your shots, so I guess that's a little bit inevitable.
Yeah.
How many restaurants of McDonald's did you end up going to?
I went to quite a few. I went to probably 500. It was over the whole course of the series. I ate a lot of McDoubles along the way.
So you may be the best person in America to ask what you think the photos in particular say about the people who go to McDonald's.
I think I think that they show that, and this is something, there are people who don't look, they're not, upper class, sophisticated, cool New Yorkers or whatnot going to McDonald's. Like that sort of yuppie class of people, you won't find there. It's more, but in rural, because McDonald's has had such bad media relations in the last few years. It's that you end up finding, the spectrum of people is much different than the spectrum of people who I'm usually around, and I enjoy being able to photograph them, and I think that they bring a whole diversity of so many colors that are interesting to photograph. And there's just, it's not just people, it's also situations. Like there are, you'll have a dad, yelling at a kid on the jungle gym, or just all these different situations that that can be really, in the right light, can be really interesting.
Let's take 3 of your McDonald's pictures in particular, and I want to go through each one, not in exhaustive detail, but let's just talk a little bit about what you saw in that moment that you thought was important to capture. Sheldon, let's bring up Sister in Idaho for number 1. And these are, this is just an interesting shot on the face of it, right? You've got all these people who, 5 sisters, fries, drinks, all in McDonald's, all sort of coloring their hair the same way. You look at that and sort of what jumped out at you?
Oh, I think their hair was just unbelievable, and it's when you look at this photo, like people, if I don't tell people where this picture is taken, they have no idea that it's in some rural Idaho town. And actually, this happens to be the same town where the photo series was born. I think this might be the most interesting McDonald's in America. But yeah, and these people would guess they're like from Long Island or New Jersey, but anywhere but rural Idaho. And it's just and they were all very excited to have their photo taken. So.
And did you confirm that they were in fact all sisters? I think they were all sisters, and then a very close family friend. So I think the 4 girls on the left are the Dennison girls, and then the girl on the right was a close family friend. So thus the resemblance. Gotcha. Let's go to the second picture, sister, which you referenced a little earlier in our conversation. This girl wrapped up in a blanket. That's not something you see every day in McDonald's. So when you saw that, what did you think?
Yeah, Amber Clements. Yeah, she could not find her coat as the family was heading off to McDonald's, and so in order to remedy this, she just grabbed a blanket instead. And of course, you don't know this when you first see her coming in the store. So that was a big surprise, and it was. I guess when she first walked in, it just, because she's wearing a tank top underneath, I couldn't even tell that she was wearing anything underneath. But
well, that was my follow-up. I was unsure about it myself because not only that, she's not wearing any shoes. Were you concerned that she was so poor that maybe she didn't have any clothing on?
No. Well, she did have flip-flops when I saw her come in the store.
Ah, okay.
So she had just taken them off while she was in the play area.
Gotcha.
And
okay,
yeah.
Third picture was, I think you call it cowboy hat. Let's take a look at that one. This is the juxtaposition of this guy with a cowboy hat and the laptop computer in front of him. Okay, go ahead, tell me. What'd you see?
Hey, cowboys have to use the internet as well, and this, he was doing the same thing I was doing at McDonald's so much of the time, and this is actually, I have to say, this is a really nice feature of McDonald's. I find that I can go, when I'm in a random European country and I can't find internet, like I can always just go to McDonald's, and this guy was doing the same. And you can, when you're in rural areas, you'll hang out for the entire evening.
So in some rural areas, McDonald's has become the community center.
Yeah, in some ways it has in a lot of rural areas, and people will really camp out. and play
Gotcha.
video games and apply for jobs.
Yep, and the play place as well. It's a place to go hang out and
indeed.
play if you want to as well. I guess, was this McDonald's series that you did your kind of first big get for the New York Times?
Yeah, this was my first major series. This was the first series that went viral. I had one previous series published about people building beach forts in Brooklyn, but this was sort of my big splash.
Okay, after the big splash came Walmart. How did the Walmart thing come together?
Walmart, these things are all related. While I was going around visiting McDonald's, I would stay in these Walmart parking lots. And because Walmart has this policy where they let any traveler stay overnight in their parking lots, like free of charge, and it's just, although they don't always have security, it feels like a safe place to be, at least, and there are other people staying in their cars, and usually in campers. That was where it was originally, where the practice was invented. But as a result, all these people have started living in cars alongside these traveling people in RVs and campers, and it's turned into it feels like this really interesting community, with $100,000 RVs parked next to, people who are living out of their cars next door, parked in the next spot over. So, and when I was seeing these, especially when I was seeing the homeless people living in their vehicles, I got curious about maybe pursuing a series on this, and then I was shooting 3 series at once at certain points. So it was you find a lot when you're out on the road in rural areas in the country.
I want to do now, as we did with the McDonald's pictures, let's take 3 in particular and just focus a bit more on those. For example, the family from Vancouver, Washington.
Yeah, so this was like a really and that was one thing about Walmart, is like there were so many powerful stories. Like, these people weren't just, I feel like every time I was just so surprised and felt, and I would hear like really heart-wrenching stories. Like this family, in this case, it was more optimistic. They had all quit their jobs, and Josie Ann and her husband had both quit their jobs, and they were going to go try to pursue disaster relief, contract jobs, and they were just, they were living out of their car in the meantime, and they had their son Gabriel with them. It was a pretty powerful situation, and also the husband had just broken his wrist, so their big dream was sort of on hiatus while his wrist was healing. So it was going to be a few weeks before he could get back at it.
Let's move from that family from Vancouver, Washington, to another group that has a very fancy motor home. Looks like husband and wife, and lots of wood paneling, and quite a nice RV. What's the story here?
Yeah, so they had me in for. They gave me a cup of tea while I was photographing them. This couple. They were from Phoenix, and they were on their way to. They had a trailer with Harleys, and they were on their way to this to the 110th Harley Davidson anniversary, like a big motorcycle show of some sort. And they definitely had a giant living room, and you can't see it in the photo, but they even had a gas fireplace in this RV camper. So that was they definitely. It definitely shows the variety, like in those 2 photos alone, that you can find in these parking lots. It's like people living, and you're living alongside each other. It's like a hotel that actually attracts people from all strata of society.
As we'll see with the next picture as well, because while they look like they were doing very well off, you also have a picture of a guy who's basically sleeping on, I don't know what that is. Looks like a piece of plastic on the ground.
Yeah, that was Caleb. He was sleeping. He was on an 11,000-mile post. After graduating from college, he went on an 11,000-mile motorcycle tour around the country, and he was. I guess he was camping out as he went along, but then he met a guy at the Walmart parking lot on his way home, and he was invited in for a glass of wine, and then he ended up staying in the parking lot under a tarp next to the guy's trailer. So it's there's definitely a community there. Like people know each other like that. And there's people are friendly as well. In fact, I found that a lot of the people, pretty much all the people who lived in the parking lots, all knew each other and would hang out with one another, and they'd go to each other's vehicles. So it was like in some ways like the government camp from the Grapes of Wrath, which I found there were some little reminiscences of that in Walmart parking lots.
Let me follow up on that, though, because, of course, the Grapes of Wrath and Tom Joad, they were, I think they're all from Oklahoma, and they were dirt poor, right? I mean, it was the Dust Bowl, and nothing worked, and everybody was down on their luck. That's not the case with some of the people you meet, right?
Well, I mean, there are the people like that's the difference. There are the people who are just traveling through in their campers, and then there are people who live in their campers, who are just retired, or they're just enjoying some sort of they're enjoying themselves in their campers, and then there are the people who are living there by necessity, and there are people who are living, and some of the people living by necessity are actually living in campers, and some of them are living in their cars, and in some cases their campers and cars will break down and they'll be stuck in the Walmart parking lot. So it's not all rosy in the parking lot, I'm afraid. Like it's not you still have bumps along the way, and I think there are a lot of people who have mental illness as well. I encountered a number of people with issues.
Nolan, is there any one thing in particular that you want people who look at your pictures to take away from those pictures?
I guess I'd like for them to take away like a certain amount of respect for the people who I photograph. Like as I cited earlier, these are my people, and I really I really enjoy being among them and photographing them and showing like the uniqueness that you can find in so many areas of the country. These photo stories, they don't necessarily have like an arch and a main character, but there is like an idea there, and there's something to be and they do sort of take you on like a bit of a journey as you go through all the photos, and I think that was something that I've always sort of uniquely had. Like, and I was originally a writing major in college, and I think although my writing is not always the best, my ideas for stories that has really come across strongly, and that's been very beneficial in my photography.
Well, keep on shooting, and thanks for joining us on TVO tonight, Nolan. It's been a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you, Steve.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.